You ever wondered what would happen if an empath looked a narcissist straight in the eye and said the one thing that could shut them down forever? Narcissists thrive on control, on twisting words, and on draining your energy until you start to question yourself. But here's the truth. They have a weakness. And once you know how to speak to them in a way that takes back your power, their entire game falls apart. In this video, I'm going to show you the exact words and strategies empaths can use to silence a narcissist without shouting, without fighting, and without losing your peace. These are not just phrases, they are power moves that expose the mask they hide behind and leave them scrambling with no control. So stay with me until the very end, because what I shared could completely change the way you handle toxic people in your life. And before we dive in, I'd love for you to join this community. If you've ever faced a narcissist, drop a comment with just one word, freedom. And make sure to subscribe, because every week we uncover new ways to protect your energy and rise stronger as an empath. There is a quiet kind of strength that most people overlook, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, and doesn't need to prove itself. It is the silent power of an empath. When you place an empath and a narcissist side by side, it may look at first like the narcissist is stronger, louder, and more in control. After all, narcissists know how to command attention, twist conversations, and make their voices fill every corner of the room. But here is where the real secret lies. The empath doesn't need that noise to win. The empath's power comes from their ability to stay calm, to stand steady when someone else is trying to pull them into chaos. And that calmness is the one thing a narcissist cannot stand. Narcissists feed off reactions. They want your anger, your tears, your defensiveness. Every raised voice, every flinch, every attempt to explain yourself is food for their ego. But when you refuse to give them that reaction, when you sit in silence and let their storm crash without moving, you create a power they cannot touch. Silence becomes your sword. Stillness becomes your shield. And in that moment, the empath flips the game entirely. The empath does not win by outshouting the narcissist, because that is a game designed for the narcissist to win. They thrive in drama and chaos, and the more you fight, the more they rise. But when you stay unshakable, when your body language says, "I am not moved," something unsettling happens inside the narcissist. They realize they cannot control you, and that realization terrifies them. It is not about having the perfect comeback or clever insult. In fact, words often make things worse because they open doors for more manipulation. The real victory comes from restraint, from choosing peace over conflict, from showing the narcissist that you are not their puppet. An empath's silence is not weakness, it is strategy. It is the refusal to dance to someone else's tune. And when the narcissist can't control the rhythm, they lose their balance. Imagine this. A narcissist raises their voice, hurls insults, and tries to bait you into defending yourself. Instead of reacting, you remain calm, steady, almost detached. You look at them with quiet eyes that say, "Your words cannot enter me." At first, they might push harder, escalate louder, throw more emotional hooks. But the moment you do not bite, their frustration grows. Why? Because they're powerless without your reaction. Their entire game is built on pulling you into a battlefield of words and emotions. The silent power of an empath is stepping off that battlefield completely. It is choosing not to play. And nothing disarms a narcissist faster than realizing their weapons bounce off the wall you've built with your calm. This kind of strength takes practice because everything in us wants to fight back when we are attacked. It is natural to defend, to explain, to prove ourselves. But empaths who master silence discover something life-changing. You don't have to justify your existence to anyone. You don't have to prove your worth through arguments. You don't have to exhaust yourself explaining the obvious to someone who has no intention of listening. Once you accept that, you become untouchable. The narcissist can scream, they can accuse, they can twist reality, but you will stand like a mountain in a storm. The wind howls, the rain pours, but the mountain remains unmoved. That is the silent power of an empath. And what makes this power even stronger is that it is not aggressive, it is not cruel, it is not about beating someone else down. It is about protecting your own peace. You are not engaging to destroy, you are disengaging to preserve. Silence is not just absence of words, it is the presence of clarity. It says, I see what you're doing and I refuse to play. And in that refusal, you regain control of your energy. Because here's the truth. A narcissist cannot survive without supply. They need your emotions the way fire needs oxygen. When you give them silence, it's like sealing off the air. The flames sputter, the heat weakens, and eventually the fire dies out. That is why silence is not passive. It is the most active form of self-protection an empath can choose. But let's go deeper, because silence is not just about keeping your mouth closed. It is about the energy you project while you are silent. If your silence is filled with anger, resentment, or fear, the narcissist can still sense it and they will feed on it. True empathic silence is different. It is calm. It is centered. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows they cannot be moved. It is a silence that radiates strength, not fear. When you stand in that energy, you are not only shutting the narcissist down, you are also healing yourself. You are teaching your nervous system that you don't have to react. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to burn yourself out, proving something that doesn't need proof. You are free. And this freedom is exactly what frustrates the narcissist the most. They want you trapped, reactive, spinning in their web. But when you rise into silence, you step outside the web altogether. You see the strings they use to pull others, and you realize none of them touch you anymore. And here is the most powerful part. When an empath embodies this silent power, they often don't even have to speak words to shut the narcissist down. Their very presence, their calm refusal to engage, their unshakable energy, it all speaks louder than any argument ever could. The narcissist feels it. They see it. They know they have lost control. And for someone who lives on control, that is the deepest wound of all. So the silent power of an empath is not about silence for the sake of silence. It is silence with purpose. It is silence as a declaration of freedom. It is silence as an act of self-respect. It is silence that says, I am not yours to control. I am not yours to provoke. I am not yours to feed on. And in that silence, the empath doesn't just shut the narcissist down. They rise above them. They show that real strength does not scream, it does not demand, it does not fight endlessly. Real strength is calm, steady, and untouchable. And once an empath learns to hold that silence, they realize they never needed to fight the narcissist in the first place. They only needed to stop giving them power. Narcissists may act fearless, as if nothing can touch them, but the truth is, they are terrified of certain words that pierce through their carefully built facade like a blade cutting through glass. You see, actions can often be dismissed or twisted. If you walk away, they call you weak. If you cry, they call you dramatic. If you argue, they say you're the crazy one. Actions are easy for them to reframe in their story. But words, clear, direct, undeniable truths, are different. Words force them to face what they have worked so hard to bury. Words act like a mirror, showing them the reflection they have spent their entire lives
trying to avoid. And this is why they fear them so much. When you, as an empath, speak the right words, you break the spell, you shatter the illusion, you leave them no room to twist, no room to escape, because truth has a way of standing on its own, strong and undeniable. Think about how a narcissist lives. They build their world on lies. Lies to others, but most importantly, lies to themselves. They wear masks so convincing that they sometimes believe them. They tell themselves they are superior, untouchable, always right. But underneath that mask is insecurity so deep it feels like a bottomless pit. Every insult, every manipulation, every power game is just a shield to protect that fragile core. And here's where words become their greatest fear. The right words expose what they are hiding. A calm sentence like, "That sounds like projection," or "I see what you're trying to do," pulls their tricks into the light. Suddenly, the invisible strings they've been using to control the situation are visible, and nothing terrifies a narcissist more than being seen. Actions can be explained away, but truth spoken out loud cannot be ignored. If you stand your ground and say, "Your opinion does not define me," it hits them like a strike. Because for once, you are not buying into their version of reality. For once, they are not the authority of your identity. And when they hear those words, they feel exposed. They realize their grip is slipping. That is why narcissists often react so violently to simple truths. They will shout, mock, belittle, anything to drown them out. But deep down, those words linger. They echo. They remind them of what they fear most, that their power is an illusion and that people can see through them. What makes words so threatening is that they leave no room for their favorite games. Gaslighting doesn't work when you calmly name what they're doing. Manipulation doesn't work when you call it out for what it is. Their control weakens the moment you put it into words, because words cannot be unseen once spoken. They hang in the air, undeniable. And when those words come from an empath, spoken not with rage, but with calm certainty, they cut even deeper. Because an empath's words carry weight. They are not said to wound, but to reveal. And revelation is the one thing a narcissist cannot handle. Imagine telling a narcissist, "I'm not responsible for how you feel." At first, they might laugh or roll their eyes. But inside, those words hit like thunder, because you just took away one of their strongest weapons, guilt. Or imagine calmly saying, "That's not my truth." Suddenly, their entire web of manipulation crumbles because you are refusing to live in their version of reality. These words slice through the fog they create, and like sunlight breaking through shadows, they leave no place to hide. That's why they fear them. Not because the words themselves are magical, but because they reveal the cracks in the mask they work so hard to protect. This is why, in so many encounters, you'll notice a narcissist trying to talk over you, trying to drown out your voice, trying to twist your words back on you. They know that if you are allowed to speak calmly and clearly, their control weakens. They fear the mirror your words provide. They fear being unmasked. And this is where the empath's true strength shows. An empath who speaks truth doesn't have to shout or argue. Their voice is steady, grounded, unshakable. And that steadiness is what makes the narcissist unravel. Because it is not about yelling louder. It is about speaking with clarity. And clarity cuts deeper than chaos ever could. When an empath says, "I see through this," they are not just speaking words. They are exposing the narcissist's greatest secret, that behind all the noise, they are empty, fragile, and deeply insecure. Words make the invisible visible. They name the games. They shine a light where the narcissist wants darkness. And while narcissists can survive actions, while they can spin stories around behavior, they cannot escape the truth once it has been spoken. That is why words terrify them more than actions ever will. So remember this. Every time you choose calm, clear truth over emotional reaction, you take their power away. Your words become the mirror they cannot escape. And though they may flinch, lash out, or deny, deep down, they know it's over. The game is exposed. And for a narcissist, there is nothing more frightening than a mirror they cannot break, a truth they cannot twist, and an empath who refuses to stay silent.
Detachment may sound like a small thing, but in the hands of an empath, it is the most powerful weapon against a narcissist. Narcissists survive by pulling you into their emotional battlefield, where they set the rules and twist the truth until you doubt yourself. They want you hooked on their approval, desperate for their validation, and tied to their opinion of you. But detachment cuts those strings. Detachment says, I see your game, and I no longer wish to play. It is not about coldness or cruelty. It is about freedom. When an empath learns to detach, they starve the narcissist of the very energy they need to survive. Every argument, every tear, every desperate explanation is food for the narcissist's ego. But when you detach, you close the kitchen, you lock the door, you stop serving them your emotions on a silver platter. And suddenly, the narcissist begins to wither, because without your energy, their control means nothing. The beauty of detachment is that it doesn't require a single word. It is not about shouting boundaries or delivering long speeches. It is about a shift in your spirit. When you detach, you stop reacting to their provocations. You stop rising to their bait. You stop living in their version of reality. Instead, you stand in your own truth, unshaken. And this calm refusal to be moved is like poison to the narcissist's ego. Imagine a narcissist throwing their usual weapons, criticism, guilt, silent treatment, manipulation, only to find that none of them land. You are not pleading, not defending, not proving yourself anymore. You are simply detached. For the narcissist, this is devastating, because without your reaction, their power collapses. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care about people. It means you refuse to be controlled by them. An empath's natural gift is compassion. But compassion without boundaries is dangerous in the hands of a narcissist. They will drain it, twist it, and use it against you. Detachment is compassion with wisdom. It says, I can care for you, but I will not lose myself in the process. And that balance is what keeps the empath strong. When you detach, you realize that their opinion of you is not your truth. You realize that their anger is not your responsibility. You realize that their chaos does not belong in your inner world. And with each realization, the chains break. The narcissist may scream, but their voice no longer reaches your soul. They may guilt trip, but it no longer hooks your heart. They may withhold affection, but you no longer crave it. That is detachment. The secret here is that narcissists rely on emotional dependence. They need you to react, to chase, to explain. That is how they keep you tied to them. But when you detach, you take away their control because you no longer need what they are holding over you. Detachment is looking at their drama and saying, that belongs to you, not me. It is standing in the middle of their storm and realizing that you do not have to be swept away. And once you learn this, you begin to see the narcissist differently. You stop seeing them as a towering figure of control and start seeing them as what they really are, someone desperate for supply, someone dependent on your energy, someone powerless without your reaction. And that perspective changes everything. Detachment also shifts the balance of power in ways the narcissist cannot handle. When you are no longer emotionally entangled, you become unpredictable to them. They cannot push your buttons because you've disconnected the wires. They cannot control your reactions because you've stopped giving them access. And this unpredictability terrifies them because narcissists thrive on knowing exactly how to provoke you. Without that certainty, they lose their grip. They're left flailing, throwing tactics that no longer stick, trying harder and harder, only to find that nothing works anymore. And in that moment, the narcissist is exposed, not as powerful, but as powerless. But let's be clear, detachment is not easy. It feels unnatural at first, especially for empaths who are wired to connect, to feel deeply, to care intensely. Walking away emotionally feels like betrayal to your own heart. But detachment is not betrayal. It is protection. It is not the absence of love, but the presence of self-respect. You are not turning cold. You are turning wise. You are choosing where your energy goes and refusing to pour it into a bottomless pit. And the more you practice detachment, the lighter you feel. The fog lifts, the anxiety lessens, and the peace you thought was lost begins to return. That peace is your proof that detachment works. The narcissist, however, will notice the shift quickly. They may try to pull you back in with love bombing, sudden kindness, or fake apologies. They may try to provoke you with insults or silent treatments. They will throw everything they can to make you react again. But here is where the empath's secret weapon shines the most. True detachment means you see these tactics for what they are, desperate attempts to regain control. And instead of falling for them, you remain steady. You don't rush back when they dangle crumbs of affection. You don't crumble when they withhold. You don't engage when they provoke. You simply stay detached, calm, unbothered. And every time you do, their grip loosens further. This is the weapon they cannot fight. You can argue with a narcissist all day and never win, because arguments are their playground. But detachment is a battlefield they cannot enter. They have no weapons for it, no strategy to defeat it. Detachment starves them of what they need most, your emotional energy. And when an empath finally masters this, the game is over. The narcissist doesn't just lose the argument, they lose access to you entirely. They can rage, they can beg, they can twist, but you are no longer there to fuel it. That is the ultimate victory. So the empath's secret weapon is not louder words, not sharper comebacks, not endless explanations. It is detachment. It is the quiet, steady decision to no longer give them what they crave. It is the calm separation of your spirit from their chaos. It is the recognition that their control only works if you allow it. And once you detach, truly detach, you see the truth. They never had real power in the first place. The power was always yours, and detachment is how you take it back. Narcissists live on ego the way a fire lives on oxygen. Every reaction you give, every defensive explanation, every tear, every outburst, these are all fuel that keeps their fire burning. The more you feed it, the stronger they grow. But here's the secret. The right words, spoken with calm certainty, can starve that ego. They are not loud, they are not cruel, and they are not emotional. They are steady, simple, and impossible for the narcissist to twist. These words are like closing the air vents on a flame, leaving it gasping until it fizzles out. And once you learn them, you'll see how quickly a narcissist loses their grip when their usual tricks no longer work. The first kind of phrase that starves the ego is one that removes their authority over you. When you say, "Your opinion doesn't define me," you take away the very thing they depend on, your need for their validation. A narcissist wants you to shape your identity around their words,
whether it's through praise or criticism. But the moment you calmly declare that their opinion has no power, they feel the ground shift beneath them. Because what good is control if their words carry no weight? That single sentence pulls the rug from under their game.
Then there is one of the most disarming phrases of all. I hear you. It sounds harmless, but in practice it is devastating to a narcissist. Why? Because it acknowledges their words without giving them fuel. Normally, they expect you to argue, to defend, to protest. But when you simply say, I hear you, and nothing more, they have nowhere to go. It is acknowledgement without engagement, attention without energy, and that starves them because they are desperate not just to be heard, but to be obeyed, validated, or feared. A calm, neutral, I hear you is like handing them an empty plate when they demanded a feast. One of the strongest ego-starving responses is silence wrapped in a short, firm phrase like, that's enough. It is not shouted, not emotional, just a calm end to the conversation. Narcissists are experts at dragging arguments into endless loops because the longer you argue, the more supply they drain. But that's enough cuts the loop short. It signals that you are no longer feeding the cycle. It is a line in the sand, and narcissists hate lines they cannot cross. Another phrase that leaves them powerless is, that doesn't work on me. Narcissists operate on tactics, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, intimidation, silent treatments. Each move is designed to provoke a specific reaction. But when you calmly call it out and say, that doesn't work on me, you rob the tactic of its power. You name it for what it is, and in doing so, you strip it of its effectiveness. Like a magician whose trick has been exposed, they suddenly lose their aura of control. And there is nothing more humiliating for a narcissist than realizing their tricks no longer work. A softer but equally powerful phrase is, that's how you feel, not how I feel. It separates their chaos from your calm. Narcissists thrive on projection. They want their anger to become your anger, their insecurity to become your insecurity. But this phrase creates a wall. It says, your emotions are not mine to carry. And without your willingness to absorb their negativity, they are left holding their own poison, something they desperately try to avoid. One of the ultimate ego-starving phrases is, I choose peace over this. It may sound simple, but it is one of the deepest blows you can deliver. Because narcissists live on drama. Conflict is their fuel, their playground, their comfort zone. When you calmly declare that you choose peace, you are telling them that their drama no longer interests you, no longer hooks you, no longer owns you. And for a narcissist, being denied that chaos is unbearable. It leaves them powerless, scrambling to find another way to get your attention while you stand firm in peace. But here's the important part. These words only work when they are delivered with calmness. If you shout them in anger, the narcissist still gets fuel. If you spit them out with resentment, they still feed on the emotion. The real power comes from speaking them with steady, quiet certainty. No heat, no energy, just truth. Because the narcissist doesn't just fear the words themselves, they fear the energy behind them. When your words come from detachment, from self-respect, from clarity, they become weapons the narcissist cannot fight. Think of it like this. Their ego is a hungry beast, always demanding to be fed. Your arguments, your tears, your explanations, those are meals. But these phrases are empty plates. They give nothing. They deny the beast the feast it expects. And the more you use them, the weaker that beast becomes, until one day it realizes there is nothing left to feed on. That is the moment you truly win, not with anger, not with revenge, but with calm, starved silence and a few carefully chosen words that cannot be twisted. So the words that starve the ego are not fancy speeches or long explanations. They are short,
clear and powerful. They remove the narcissist's authority, expose their tactics, and refuse their chaos. They sound simple, but they carry a power that hits deeper than shouting ever could, because at their core, narcissists do not fear insults or arguments. What they fear most is indifference. What they fear is the moment you stop feeding their ego. And these words are the tools that make that possible. They are the quiet keys that unlock your freedom and the locks that shut the narcissist out of your energy forever. Narcissists live behind a carefully constructed mask, a polished image they present to the world to appear confident, charming, or even kind. But behind that mask hides their true self, fragile, insecure, and terrified of being seen for who they really are. The moment an empath speaks a sentence that slices through the illusion, it's like pulling the curtain back on a stage. Suddenly, the spotlight exposes what they never wanted anyone to see. A phrase as simple as, "That's not who you really are," or "I see the real you behind all of this," can leave them frozen, scrambling to regain control. Narcissists survive on deception, on convincing others to believe the role they play. When you strip away the mask, you deny them the one thing they cannot live without: validation of the lie. An empath doesn't need to scream, accuse, or argue. They only need to calmly state the truth in a way that leaves no room for escape. In that moment, the narcissist feels naked, exposed, and powerless. Their false kingdom crumbles because the greatest fear of a narcissist is not losing people. It is losing the image they worked so hard to protect. There is something deeply powerful about a person who knows where they end and where another begins. Empaths, for so long, are taught to bend, to give, to absorb the emotions of others as if that is their unshakable duty. They carry the weight of other people's needs, often at the expense of their own. But what many empaths eventually learn is that their greatest strength is not only their sensitivity, but their ability to draw firm lines that cannot be crossed. Boundaries are not walls of anger or punishment, they are shields of self-respect. And when spoken with calm authority, they become weapons that instantly shut down manipulation. A narcissist thrives on testing limits, pushing buttons, and finding cracks where they can slip in control. They will charm, they will guilt, they will intimidate, but the moment an empath learns to stand in their truth and say, "This is not acceptable," or "I will not continue this conversation if you raise your voice," everything changes. It's not the volume of the words, it's the steadiness. It's the refusal to be shaken. It's the calm certainty that says, "I know who I am, I know what I will allow, and I will not bend just because you demand it." Boundaries terrify narcissists because they strip away the fuel of control. Think of it like a lock on a door they once walked through freely. For years, they had the key to your emotions. They could storm in with criticism, manipulation, or false praise, and rearrange the furniture of your self-worth however they liked. But once you put that lock in place, their access is denied. They knock, they push, they rattle the handle, but the door does not open. And it is not locked out of spite. It is locked out of self-protection, a declaration that your inner world is sacred ground. This is why narcissists react with such fury to boundaries. They might accuse you of being selfish, cold, or uncaring. They might try to guilt you by saying, "You used to be different," or "I can't believe you're treating me this way." But what they really mean is, "I can no longer use you the way I used to." The anger they project is proof that the boundary worked.
The beauty of strong boundaries is that they do not require explanation, justification, or argument. An empath does not need to write a speech defending why they deserve respect. They simply state the boundary, and if it is ignored, they enforce it with action. For example, if a narcissist uses insults to break you down, you don't argue about why their words are hurtful. You simply say, "If this continues, I am leaving the conversation." And then you follow through. Calm, steady,
unshakable. That follow-through is what breaks their grip, because narcissists are used to people folding under pressure, explaining themselves endlessly, or giving in after enough guilt has been applied. But an empath who stands firm is like a mountain in the storm. The wind may howl, the rain may pour, but the mountain does not move. And that unmovable presence is something a narcissist cannot conquer. It's important to understand that boundaries are not about punishing the narcissist. They are about protecting yourself. Too many empaths confuse boundaries with cruelty, as if saying no means withholding love. But the opposite is true. Boundaries are the deepest form of self-love, the commitment to honor your own spirit, even in the face of manipulation. A narcissist may thrive on power, but an empath thrives on peace, and peace cannot exist without limits. Boundaries are how you build that peace, brick by brick. Each time you calmly assert a limit, you are telling your nervous system, I am safe, I am in control, I will not abandon myself anymore. And that message slowly rewires the old patterns of people-pleasing that narcissists exploit so easily. There is also a profound silence that comes with boundaries. When you set them, you do not need to match the narcissist's chaos. You don't need to raise your voice or prove your point. You simply step back into your own calm authority. Imagine a narcissist trying to provoke an argument, hurling accusations or twisting your words to trap you. In the past, you might have defended yourself, trying desperately to be understood. But with boundaries, the game changes. You don't play their game anymore. You state what is acceptable, and then you step away. That quiet detachment is unnerving to them because it shows that they no longer control the strings of your emotions. They can pull, but you do not move. They can shout, but you do not flinch. That is the silent power of boundaries. They starve the narcissist of the reaction they crave. Of course, boundaries are tested. A narcissist will push harder the first time you set them. They will try to corner you, to wear you down. But the more consistent you are, the weaker their grip becomes. It's like teaching someone that the old door they once walked through is permanently locked. At first, they bang louder, but over time they realize it will not open, and eventually they stop trying. This doesn't mean the narcissist changes, it means you have changed. You have reclaimed authority over your own space. You have built a fortress that protects your peace, and you no longer confuse sacrifice with love or silence with acceptance. Instead, you use your voice to declare where you stand, and you use your actions to show that you mean it. Boundaries are not just words, they are energy. When you embody them fully, people feel it. A narcissist senses when you are still unsure, when your no is shaky, when your stop still carries doubt. But when your boundary comes from a place of calm confidence, it carries a weight that cannot be ignored. It is not harsh, but it is final. It does not need to be screamed, but it is heard louder than any insult. And it leaves the narcissist with no choice but to face the truth. They cannot break through you anymore. In the end, boundaries are the ultimate form of freedom for an empath. They are the line that separates compassion from self-sacrifice, love from enslavement, and connection from control. When you master them, you do not become hard or cold. You become unshakably kind to yourself. You no longer give away your energy to someone who thrives on draining it. You no longer accept mistreatment disguised as love. Instead, you create a life where peace is protected, where love flows in healthy balance, and where manipulation has no place to grow. And the narcissist, for all their tactics and strategies, finds themselves powerless in the face of that strength. Because at the end of the day, the greatest defeat for a narcissist is not your anger, not your retaliation, but your calm, steady refusal to be controlled. That is the power of boundaries that cannot be broken. There is a quiet kind of strength that an empath learns over time, a strength that doesn't need loud words or endless explanations. Narcissists thrive on emotional chaos, on long arguments, and on pulling you into conversations that go nowhere but leave you drained. They want your energy, your passion, your frustration, because all of it feeds their ego. That's why the art of saying less is one of the most powerful tools an empath can ever master. It's not about ignoring, it's about responding with precision. A short, calm sentence carries far more weight than a desperate attempt to make them understand. The truth is, a narcissist will never truly hear your reasoning because their mind isn't wired to accept responsibility. But they will feel the sting when your words are sharp, minimal, and final. Imagine saying, "That's your opinion, not mine," instead of explaining for hours while you disagree. Imagine answering manipulation with, "I don't accept that," instead of debating for days. Short responses strip away their ability to twist your words. It leaves no room for them to bait you into a fight. The narcissist thrives when you get emotional, but when you stay steady and say less, it cuts off their fuel supply. They push, they provoke, they test, but your silence between short phrases becomes louder than their shouting. It shows them you won't play their game anymore. The art of saying less isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's reclaiming control by refusing to waste your breath. And the narcissist, no matter how hard they try, cannot fight someone who doesn't hand them words to twist. Projection is one of the narcissist's favorite weapons. Whenever they feel cornered, whenever they sense their mask slipping, they will hurl their own flaws at you. If they are lying, they will accuse you of dishonesty. If they are controlling, they will label you as manipulative. If they feel insecure, they will insist that you're the jealous one. This tactic works so well for them because it shifts the spotlight away from their behavior and forces you to defend yourself. And the moment you start defending, you've already lost the battle. They've pulled you back into their game. But here's where the power shifts. When you calmly reveal projection for what it is, their entire script begins to crumble. For example, when they accuse you of being selfish, you don't need to shout or explain your life story. You simply say, "That sounds like projection." Those 4 words can freeze them. Why? Because projection only works if you take the bait. When you name it, you cut the string they're trying to tie around you. Narcissists are skilled at weaving illusions, but they are terrified of being unmasked. The second you expose projection, they stumble because their control relies on you not recognizing the trick. Calling it out forces them to face silence, to feel their tactics lose power. It leaves them scrambling for a new angle, but it also plants a seed in their mind. They know you see through them now. And once you see through a narcissist, you can never unsee it. This is why exposing projection is so powerful. It doesn't just protect your energy, it destabilizes their control. It shows them you won't be their mirror anymore because you refuse to reflect their darkness back as your own.
The narcissist can handle almost anything. Your anger, your silence, your confusion, even your tears. They feed on those reactions because it makes them feel in control. They thrive on chaos, and they thrive on the belief that you will tiptoe around them to keep the peace. But there is one thing they cannot handle, one thing that slips past all their masks, defenses, and carefully constructed illusions, and that is the truth spoken without fear. You see, narcissists live in a world of distortion. They build entire realities out of lies, half-truths, and twisted narratives. They convince themselves they are always right, always superior, always the victim when things go wrong. They have crafted this fragile bubble of self-deception, and inside that bubble, they can manipulate, control, and rewrite events to suit their ego.
But truth has a strange power. It cuts through the fog. It slices through illusions, and when it is spoken with calm certainty, it becomes a mirror that cannot shatter. When you tell a narcissist the truth without trembling, without over-explaining, without fear in your voice, you expose the hollowness of their control. They cannot handle it because the truth shines a light into the places they have spent their whole lives hiding from. Imagine a person who has built a castle out of glass, but painted every wall to look like stone. On the outside, it appears unshakable, impenetrable, even majestic. But when truth comes, it is like a stone thrown through those walls. Suddenly, the illusion is gone, and the fragility is revealed. That's what truth does to a narcissist. It exposes what they are desperate to keep hidden. Their insecurity, their fear of being ordinary, their terror of not being worshipped. The truth does not even have to be grand or dramatic. It can be something simple. When they say, "You're nothing without me," and you calmly reply, "I was someone before you, and I'll still be someone after you," that is truth. When they claim, "No one else will ever love you like I do," and you respond, "I would rather wait for genuine love than settle for control," that is truth. When they try to gaslight you with, "That never happened," and you calmly reply, "I know what I saw and I trust my memory," that is truth. These words may seem small, but to a narcissist, they are devastating, because they cannot manipulate truth when it is spoken with calm certainty. They cannot twist it when you refuse to argue. They cannot silence it when you do not fear their reaction. Truth in its pure form is not emotional. It is steady, it is clear, and it does not require permission. Narcissists expect you to fight, to cry, to yell, to explain yourself for hours. They know how to spin those reactions into ammunition. But when you simply speak truth without fear, you give them nothing to work with. You leave them standing in the shadow of their own lies. This is their weakest spot, because the narcissist's entire existence is built on avoiding truth. They avoid the truth about their past, the truth about their failures, the truth about the harm they cause, the truth about their emptiness. They surround themselves with distractions, with people who feed their ego, with endless justifications for their behavior. But when someone refuses to be silenced and dares to speak the truth directly, calmly, and fearlessly, it shakes the foundation of their false identity. That's why they react with such rage, why they try to silence you, why they will insult, attack, or even discard you after you speak truth. Because deep down, they know it is the one thing they cannot win against. They can outwit, they can outtalk, they can manipulate emotions, but they cannot destroy truth. They can deny it, but the denial never removes its power. And this is where your strength lies. Speaking the truth without fear is not about trying to convince the narcissist. It is not about changing their mind or winning an argument. It is about reclaiming your power. It is about standing tall in your reality and refusing to bend under their pressure. It is about sending a silent message, "I see you clearly, and I will not be controlled." The reason this terrifies a narcissist is that they depend on you not seeing clearly. They depend on confusion, on doubt, on making you second-guess yourself. But when you speak the truth firmly and without fear, you are declaring that their spell is broken. And once it is broken, it cannot be repaired. Think of it like this. Fear is the fuel that keeps a narcissist's control alive. Every time you hold back, every time you water down your truth, every time you silence yourself to avoid conflict, you are feeding their power. But when you remove fear, you cut off the fuel. Suddenly, their usual tactics fall flat. Their insults don't land.
Their gaslighting doesn't confuse you. Their manipulation feels transparent. All because you chose to speak what is real without trembling. And once you do it, you realize something profound. The truth doesn't just disarm the narcissist, it strengthens you. Each time you stand firm, your voice grows steadier, your heart grows calmer, and your mind grows clearer. Truth becomes your shield, and fear can no longer control you. This is why the narcissist's weakest spot is not your silence, not your withdrawal, not even your absence, but your fearlessness in speaking truth. Because when you reach that place, they lose their ability to dominate your reality. They may yell louder, they may grow more desperate, but you will see it for what it is, noise without substance. Their rage will look less like power and more like panic. Their words will sound less like authority and more like projection, and their entire act will begin to unravel before your eyes. At that moment, you will understand something the narcissist never will. Truth does not need permission to exist. It does not need agreement, and it does not need validation. Truth stands on its own, and when you stand with it, you become untouchable. So remember this, the narcissist may control the room, they may dominate the conversation, they may twist stories and paint themselves as the hero. But the moment you speak the truth without fear, their mask slips. And once a mask slips, it can never be worn the same way again. That is their weakest spot. Not your vulnerability, not your mistakes, not your silence, but your fearless truth. It is the one weapon they cannot take from you, the one shield they cannot break, and the one light they cannot extinguish. Because when you hold the truth in your heart and speak it calmly, you are no longer trapped in their illusion. You are free. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than someone they can no longer control. Imagine standing in front of a storm. The winds roar, the sky darkens, and chaos swirls all around it. Most people would panic, shout, or fight against it, wasting their energy. But an empath, when awakened to their true power, knows that the real shield isn't built on noise or aggression. It's built on presence. This is what I call the empath energy shield, a quiet force so steady that it makes a narcissist's chaos bounce back like a wave crashing against a rock. Narcissists thrive on reaction. They want your anger, your tears, your explanations, because every emotional outburst is food for their ego. But the moment you stop feeding them, the moment you become calm, grounded, and unshakable, you cut off their oxygen. They flail, they push harder, they escalate, but their power begins to collapse when they realize their tricks no longer move you. An empath doesn't need to fight with fists or scream with words. They win by standing in their truth, by radiating stillness that says, "I see you, but I won't be moved by you." That calm presence is not weakness. It's the most unbreakable shield, one that leaves the narcissist powerless in their own storm, exposed and defeated. There's a moment every empath eventually reaches. The moment you realize you don't need to fight to win. You don't need to argue. You don't need to defend yourself endlessly. And you don't need to match the chaos that a narcissist throws at you. Silence, calm detachment, and a simple "I disagree," said without emotion, has far more impact than shouting matches that go in circles. By staying centered, you make it clear that you're not a toy to be wound up and spun around anymore. You win not by overpowering them, but by removing the very fuel that keeps them going. Their drama collapses without your participation. Their arguments crumble without your defense.
And their emotional traps become useless when you stop stepping into them. This is not weakness, It's strategy, it's strength. It's the art of ending the war before it ever begins, and it leaves them powerless in a way that fighting never could. Walking away with power is the ultimate act of freedom, and it's something many people don't realize they hold within them until they've been pushed to the edge. A narcissist thrives on control. Control over your emotions, control over your time, and control over how you see yourself. They live off the attention you give them, whether it's positive or negative. Every tear, every explanation, every heated argument, and even every attempt to make them understand fuels their illusion of power. They don't care if your attention comes in the form of love or in the form of anger. To them, it's all supply. And that's why walking away is so devastating to them. It cuts off the lifeline that keeps their game alive. It tells them, without words, that you see through the illusion, that you no longer accept the role they assigned you, and that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on someone who only takes. The thing about walking away is that it doesn't just mean physically leaving the room, although sometimes that's part of it. True walking away begins inside your spirit, the moment you decide, I will not be broken by this anymore. You start to see the cycle for what it is, the manipulation, the projection, the endless back and forth arguments that go nowhere. You start to recognize that no matter how many times you try to prove your worth, explain your side, or fight for fairness, the narcissist will always twist the outcome in their favor. That's their game. But the moment you realize you don't have to play, you've already won. Narcissists hate losing control. They hate silence. They hate indifference. They hate the calm confidence of someone who no longer reacts. Because when you stop reacting, you stop feeding them. It's like unplugging a machine. It simply stops working. They may rage, they may beg, they may switch tactics and try to charm you again. But all of it comes from the same desperation. They need your energy to feel alive. When you walk away, when you cut off that attention, you are reminding yourself of a truth they never wanted you to believe. You are the one with the real power. They only ever had the power you handed them. Walking away with power is not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong or waiting for them to regret what they've done. It's about reclaiming yourself. It's about protecting your mind, your heart, and your spirit. Narcissists are masters of creating illusions. They make you think you're dependent on them, that you need their approval, that you won't survive without their presence. But when you walk away, when you choose freedom over control, you prove that those illusions were never real. You break the spell. You step back into your own life with a clarity that no one can take from you. Of course, walking away isn't easy. It often comes with grief, confusion, and the pain of letting go of what you hoped the relationship could be. You may battle guilt, you may feel doubt, and you may even be tempted to go back when the narcissist tries to pull you in again with sweet words or fake apologies. But walking away with power means standing firm in the truth you've learned. It means reminding yourself every time doubt whispers in your ear that peace is more valuable than chaos, and freedom is worth far more than empty promises. When you walk away, you're not just leaving them, you're returning to yourself. You're walking back into your own strength, your own voice, your own life. You're saying, I am enough as I am. I do not need to prove myself to anyone who refuses to see my worth. That's where the true power lies. Not in arguments, not in proving them wrong, but in standing tall in your truth and choosing yourself.
And here's the beauty of it. Once you walk away, you begin to heal. You start to see how much of yourself you lost in the constant battles, and you slowly gather those pieces back. Your energy, once drained by manipulation, begins to flow back into your passions, your peace, your joy. You find yourself laughing again, sleeping again, breathing freely again. This is what they feared most, not just that you would leave them, but that you would discover a life without them is brighter, calmer, and far more fulfilling. The narcissist's greatest fear isn't being exposed, it isn't being confronted, it isn't even being hated. Their greatest fear is being ignored, being irrelevant in the life of someone they once controlled. When you walk away with power, you hand them that fear. And though they may never admit it, though they may pretend it doesn't bother them, deep down, they know they've lost the only thing that gave them power over you, your attention. So walking away is not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not giving up. It's the strongest move you can make, because it ends the game entirely. The moment you withdraw your energy, the moment you reclaim your freedom, you remind both them and yourself that your life is yours to live. You don't need their validation, you don't need their drama, and you certainly don't need their permission. Walking away with power is the final chapter in the story of breaking free. It's the quiet, unshakable truth that says, "You do not own me. You do not control me. I choose peace. I choose myself. I choose freedom." And when you walk into that freedom, you will never look back the same way again.